Hey guys, it's Kay from KS Anonymous, and today I have a very special episode of r/Am I the A-hole or r/AmITheA. This is actually going to be one post, and it's actually a viewer submission. Because of its length, I decided I would do just a special episode for this one, and I know it's pretty close to my last r/AmITheA video, but I just kind of wanted to put it in here and get your guys' feedback on what you think about this situation. Anyway, I guess I'll call this one AmITheA for telling my fiance she can't invite her friends or even her mother to our wedding. Oh, also, my name is pretty unique, so I guess call me Shepard instead. As you can guess from the title, I could be heavily biased in my retelling of this story, but I'm going to try and be as honest and forthcoming as possible, as I want as informed a response as possible to the situation. Some background. This story begins 5 years ago, so I will try to be brief, but obviously we've got a lot to get through. I first met my fiance, who we'll call Meryl, through Tumblr, of all things. We met through a relatively small fandom we both were a part of and hit it off right away. When I say we hit it off, I have a phobia of phone calls, and even though I was 21 back then, my mom would literally put on a voice and pretend to be me on the phone because I just couldn't deal with it. Relevant soon. At the time, I worked at Argos, and I'm not sure if those exist in the US, but basically it sells everything but food. Bikes, toys, fridges, you name it. Because it has such extensive stock, customers pick what they want out of a catalog, make note of the item number for the cashier, pay for the item, and then a warehouse rat will appear and hand it over 5 minutes later. So the part of the shop customers have access to is pretty small. So one day at my work, someone who did unspeakable things to me walked into the store. I was standing behind a till across the room and ran before they saw me. I found a corner in the warehouse and cried. Like full-on hyperventilating, gonna make yourself throw up sobs. This was the first time I've seen them in person since, well, you get the idea. So this is like the worst day ever. My anxiety is already way higher than I can deal with, and yet without thinking, after only knowing her a few weeks, I picked up my phone and called Meryl for help. That's the level of hit it off I'm talking about. A couple of months in, we decided to meet. Now, this is a strictly as friends meeting. I didn't have any kind of romantic intentions, and though Meryl had a crush on me, she actually hadn't realized it yet. We lived at opposite ends of the countries, so the plan was for me to get the train down to her and stay the weekend before coming home. Right before I arrived, Meryl had her friends Lauren and Danielle, obviously fake, visiting. They are also sisters. They asked Meryl when they could stay until, and Meryl explained she was meeting me for the first time and thought having more people along might be a bit overwhelming for me, so she wanted to meet me alone. That's it. That's the atrocious crime I committed for Lauren and Danielle to immediately decide I was a horrible person. As our friendship grew, Lauren and Danielle spent the next 2 or 3 years telling everyone who would listen what a horrible person I am and what awful things I'd done. At this point, I have neither met nor spoken to either of them still, so it's all, well, whatever interpretation of me hanging out with Meryl they can come up with. I really don't want to interject too much opinion here, as I don't know what their friendship is truly like, but it honestly looks like they know Meryl will agree to whatever they want, and when I came along and she suddenly had other plans, that was a big no. Meryl would tell me stories about the way they spoke to her and how they reacted if she said no to them, and it really made me angry and uncomfortable to hear about it. Meryl had really low self-esteem from her time living at home, more on that later, and I feel like they really took advantage of that to make her do what they wanted. So at this point in our story, Meryl moves in with Danielle and another of their friendship group. Because of this, Danielle has no option but to meet me because Meryl invites me to stay once in a while, and sometimes she just hasn't got an excuse to avoid me. Don't get me wrong, she still won't actually acknowledge me or be in the room with me more than she absolutely has to, but I do manage to have a couple of conversations with her, i.e. as a group that we both happen to be in. During this time, Meryl admits her feelings for me, and I realize I reciprocate, and we start dating. I won't gush, but she's an absolute angel, and I honestly don't deserve her. She didn't so much as blink when I came out as trans, held my hand through a very stressful and long autism diagnosis, and though she'd never done it before, she was happy to try being in a poly relationship with me and another girl. I know this is not something everyone's on board with doing, but they got on really well with each other. They weren't dating, just both dating me. And I really tried to make sure they both felt special and not like they were getting half of my attention each. We started dating in October, and that December I go over for a New Year's party, which Lauren is also attending, as well as Lauren's SO and a few others. As a larger group, we spend the night drinking, talking, playing silly games like Cards Against Humanity. It's nice. I think the issues are more or less put to bed. Lauren even offers to drive me to my train in a couple days after we all go out for dinner together. I don't expect them to be my new BFFs, but at least we're all on talking terms now, right? Oh boy, let me tell you, I've never been more wrong about anything in my life. Sadly, things with the other girl didn't work out. Long distance relationship, need I say more? And so it became just me and Meryl after a few months. We go on dating, she moves out of the house with Danielle and into her own place. Living with friends wasn't so good for them all, sadly, but they managed to maintain a relationship. I move a lot closer, it's all good. So after 2.5 years that feel like a lifetime, in a really good way, I decide to propose. I knew Meryl would be happy if I never did because she's the kind of person that will go above and beyond for someone else, but never expects or thinks she deserves a fuss, which is exactly why she does. I bought a beautiful ring I found with her favorite stone, reserved a table at a really nice restaurant, and got front row seats to a show with Meryl's hero in it, who just so happens to be a family friend. I even went out of my way to ask her ring size, then create this whole BS story about why I was asking so she wouldn't suspect a thing. I messaged my parents to let them know what I planned, and they were really excited for me because they both love Meryl too. After the show, we go for drinks with the cast, and while we're in the pub, I get down on my knee and ask her to marry me. Honestly, so many things went wrong with my plan, but that kind of just made it even more of a special night for me, and I've never seen my girl smile wider than when I slid that ring on her finger. That's when the crab hit the fan. We get back to my place to open the bottle of champagne I bravely bought in advance, and Meryl decides to drop her mother a message on Facebook to preempt being Facebook official, as her mom is not exactly my biggest fan. She swears it's not homophobia and it's just me that is the problem, and heck, maybe that's true, as parents have never been fond of me for reasons I've never been able to understand, even as a kid going on playdates. Anyway, I digress. She decided to use Messenger instead of call because it was late at night and she didn't want to wake her, but also didn't want her to feel like she was the last to know by waiting until the next day to call. Her mom can be very particular about things, and quite frankly, I find her very abusive towards Meryl, which accounts for some of Meryl's selfless behavior. As a teenager, her mother forced her to pay every individual phone bill for the 4 of them in the house, and she often was verbally abusive over absolutely nothing. And Meryl will, to this day, apologize just for existing pretty much constantly because she's so afraid of setting me off the way her mother would be set off. I'm obviously skipping over a lot of details here, but her mother is the kind of person who will be super passive aggressive in an argument, then deliberately not reply for days just to make you sweat a bit. When Meryl visits home for Christmas, etc., I am definitely not invited, but I'm also not allowed to talk to Meryl because her mom will punish her for texting me, and it's just easier for me to disappear for a few days rather than risk the wrath of mom by checking if my fiance is okay. Anyway, this is why Meryl thought very carefully about how to present the news of our engagement to her mom. Unsurprisingly, she chose wrong, as if there'd be a right. And her mom immediately jumps onto Messenger to tell Meryl she didn't raise a daughter who messages instead of calls for big news, and she could never forgive her, and to not talk to her for a few days because she was so angry. Meryl was obviously upset, and looking for some happiness, we decided to post our news to Facebook and get some positive reactions. Mistake number 2. Almost immediately, an angry reaction is up on our post from Lauren, who then proceeds to make a secret WhatsApp group chat with their entire friend group, minus Meryl obviously, to let everyone know that Meryl is marrying a sack of crap and to list my crimes, which I will also do so you can give me fair judgment. She also messaged Meryl directly to tell her she was making a huge mistake, and when she asked to respect her decision, Lauren said she simply couldn't because it was wrong. This is when Meryl noticed that Lauren was no longer her friend on Facebook. She asked if Lauren unfriended her, to which Lauren responded, yes, but not intentionally. She then messaged the group chat to tell them that Meryl had unfriended her. After a lot of back and forth with third parties, it transpired that Lauren had meant to unfollow rather than unfriend and had accidentally blocked Meryl. Obviously, upon unblocking, they were no longer friends. It was all a bit of a weird mess, and eventually Meryl extended an olive branch and requested they be friends again. Anyway, onto the list. 1. I had a side chick for most of the relationship. I've already kind of addressed this above. We were initially in a poly relationship that didn't work out. Again, I understand not everyone likes or gets those relationships, but Meryl was totally happy with it, and I think that should be the part that matters. Number 2, I brag about my conquests. I don't know particular details of what I bragged, but Meryl and I are very open about our previous relationships because, well, why wouldn't we be? We talk about everything, and relationships are huge parts of our past, so they are part of the story. I don't really know what else to say about that one. Number 3, I force Meryl to see me. As I mentioned above, we now live a lot closer together than we used to. However, it's still a couple hours on the train to get to each other. We try to see each other at least once a month, and as I live in London, Meryl tends to come to me as there's more stuff to do here. I'm not entirely sure what she thinks I'm doing, maybe reaching through the internet and dragging her to my house. Number 4, I threaten force quitting my life to get my way. Okay, so this one's a little bit darker. Somewhat near the beginning of our friendship, I had to leave London to move back with my mom because I was severely depressed and wanted to end it. I don't remember much of that time, but mom had to literally feed me and bathe me because I was basically in a catatonic state and just sat there all day not doing anything. We went to the doctors, and a nurse who met me for less than 5 minutes decided the medication I'd been taking since I was 16 wasn't actually needed since I wasn't depressed, and refused to give me a new prescription. So I decided I'd had enough. I made my plan and wrote my letter to say goodbye to my mom, who was basically the only person left in my life. I hadn't known Meryl that long, but I wanted to say goodbye to her. Even in that state, I had this stupid fear that I would disappear and she would think I just got sick of her and went away and never know the real reason I wasn't around anymore. I didn't want her to think that. She already thought so little of herself. At the time, she didn't know my mom or have any way to contact her, so she'd never be able to reach out when I was gone. So I sent her a message to say goodbye. I don't remember what I said exactly, but I basically told her what I was going to do and thanked her for her friendship. I won't deny that I made her feel horrible. Honestly, looking back, I'm not sure I can see a better way of handling it other than adding a PS, "Can you contact this girl off the internet for me?" to my note, which I'd never know for sure would be followed through. As such, I'm not sure I can really apologize for what I did. I feel truly awful for the pain I needlessly caused her, given that I'm still here, but it felt like the best thing I could do in that horrible situation. I guess because I survived, it was a threat in the end, rather than a goodbye. That's thankfully the only time I have tried to do that to myself since I've known Meryl. A testament to how good she is for me, and I would never say something like that as a way to manipulate anyone into doing what I want. Number 5. I openly threatened to punch her in front of her friends. This one is both the silliest and most offensive to me. Sure, I threatened to hit her. She threatens to hit me. Lauren herself threatens to hit Meryl. I don't know if this translates in America, but in Britain, if you like someone, you show them by threatening violence. It's a joke. It's part of our weird, twisted humor as a nation. It's just what you do. There is no way, under any circumstances, me saying, "I will punch you," to Mel in a party environment, as it was New Year's Eve, could possibly be misconstrued as a genuine threat. I honestly can't emphasize enough how utterly ridiculous it is. It's like saying you heard someone say F off and genuinely thinking they're going to have intimate relations with that person to make them go away. On the other hand, perhaps even more than using my mental illness against me, this one hurt. It had never occurred to me that I could even do that. Like, domestic violence is just something that happens to other people, you know? I was truly appalled that someone could see the two of us together, see me as a person, especially after having gotten to know me a little, and believe I'd be capable of that. I know people who are abused don't go around telling everyone. I mean, I literally know that from being an abused person. I know you hide it. But it it was just such a punch in the gut to hear that Lauren and Danielle could see our smiles and happiness and be so convinced of my evil that they won't see anything but that in me. Some of Meryl's other friends have also met me and commented on how happy Mel clearly is when I'm around. Meryl tells me this afterwards. And yet they still fully believe that this is all some elaborate lie I've created to hide the truth. Regardless of my own history of abuse, I would never, ever lay my hands on Meryl like that. And verbal abuse is something I'm so afraid of. I feel like it would be super easy to slip into, so it really touched a nerve as it's something Meryl and I talk about once in a while. Because I like to check in and make sure she doesn't feel like I'm falling into her mother's old role. Wow, I'm sorry. I had no idea this would be such an essay. Now we get down to the actual AmITheA of it all. Meryl and I loosely discussed wedding plans and who we would invite, bearing in mind we don't even live together yet, only a few months to go, so it's a long way off yet, and Meryl said she would invite her mom, Lauren, and Danielle, even though she knows the sisters definitely won't come. And her mom has said she might come, but if she does, she'll sit in the back because she doesn't want to be a part of it. At first, I just nodded along to this, but then a few days later, I realized it had been bothering me. This is mine and Meryl's special day. Sure, they're her friends and family, but this is my wedding too, and I deserve to have the best day I can possibly have. It's not so much that I don't want to invite them, it's more that I want to be with people who support us. The difference may not make sense, it's hard to explain. I deserve to invite the people I love and who love us, rather than they don't deserve an invite. But maybe I'm just sugarcoating it for myself, I don't know. We've since talked about it and I've told her I don't want to invite them. She's agreed not to. Again, this is very loose plans as we're not getting married for a few years. But as I said earlier, I'm super scared of becoming a controlling partner, and I've tried so hard not to tell her who she can and cannot be friends with. But here I am saying who she can and can't invite to our wedding. I think if she really insisted upon it, I'd step down and let her invite them. But AmITheA for bringing it up in the first place? Is it manipulative knowing her history of verbal abuse and knowing she'd probably agree to not invite them just to keep me happy if I pushed? Should I just shut up because it's only a piece of paper and they're not coming anyway, so what's the harm? Am I being that controlling person I don't want to be? So I did respond to Shepard here, and in my opinion, Shepard is not being an a-hole. I think, granted all the history in this situation, I don't see it being a good situation if they decided to actually use their invitation and show up, especially the mom. Because I feel like the mom would probably try to maybe make a scene or just put a damper on the whole wedding day. But I think that if this is something that Shepard is still worried about, that they should definitely talk about it again and make sure that Meryl is going to be okay with it, because I'm not sure where Meryl is coming from in this situation. If Meryl really just wants her mom to be there, even if her mom's gonna be a jerk, or if she's just trying to appease her mom. So I think that's an important difference, if that makes sense, but I don't think that any of that's coming from a manipulative standpoint. But I really want to hear from you guys, and I'm sure that Shepard wants to hear from you all, what you think about this situation and if they are being the a-hole here. Thank you so much for watching today's special episode of r/AmITheA. Again, let me and Shepard know your thoughts in the comments below and drop a like if you enjoyed it. I'll talk to you in my next video. Bye!